So for this module's learning synthesis, I decided to do a video because I'm actually the most passionate about UDL and I've been waiting for this and most excited to talk about it. And so I thought that this would be a little bit of a more organic way to do this learning synthesis. Um, and my idea kind of going into all learning synthesis is like I try to pick out what I'm thinking about most as I'm going through the course material. And for me, it was how can I take this? I've learned about it a couple of times in undergrad, and how can I actually, going into my second year, start to think about more intentionally now that I kind of know the content, like how can I take this and really apply it? And I'm not gonna lie, I got super overwhelmed because there's so much, and you feel like you need to do all of it at once, and you need to figure out how you are going to incorporate all these components of UDL at one time. And I had to take a step back and realize that's not how it happens. And I think by watching these videos and hearing them talk about it, I kind of understood like, these changes and even this learning didn't happen overnight. And it doesn't need to happen overnight for me because learning about it now is like the most important part about starting this process. And so that gave me a little bit of leeway to step back and think about, okay, so let's do one thing at a time. I kind of thought about it like building a house. Me and my husband are currently thinking about building a house, and as we start to think about things, it's really overwhelming to think about, oh my gosh, we have to pick out light fixtures, and then we have to pick out countertops, and on top of that, we have to think about the layout, which is probably the most important and the first thing I should have been thinking about. And it's the same thing with UDL. It's like, where do I begin? There's so many options. It's like also, let's look at how am I delivering the content? And what are the options and ways that I can give students to show me what they've learned? And especially in first grade, it seems a little bit more taxing to think about from a classroom management perspective, like how am I going to do this? But you take it one step at a time. And so I decided to just pick out one component of one lesson for a letterland lesson. In Wake County, we have pretty clear laid out ELA guidelines, block guidelines, which is a non-negotiable. It's something that I check for fidelity. And so I wanted to take that and really look at what components of UDL can I see right now? What can I add without taking away from what they expect from me? And then what are some considerations looking at the lesson in front of me? What are some things that I know that I need to be watching out for this year, and how that might affect my students? Okay, so this is the segment that I picked. This is our day 3 of our unit, where we focus on our tricky words. And so there are a few different things that are in our must-do category for tricky words that we do in whole group, in small group, and independently. I kind of took this from the small group guidelines, but we also do it in whole group. And so this is kind of where my mind was and what I was thinking of. And so I'm going to be looking at the 3x3 tricky word strategy. And in the 3x3 tricky word strategy, the students trace, write, or skywrite the words 3 times, aloud, whisper, and silent. And usually they do all of them. So they'll start here with the air trace. They'll do the invisible writing either on their finger um, or with their finger on the table, the carpet, their leg, some kind of surface. And then they will also actually write it. And sometimes this doesn't occur all in one day, it can be spread out. But that's kind of what it looks like when we do the 3x3. The parts of this activity that I saw that had UDL was the ability to choose writing, tracing, or skywriting. And I say that with the potential because the way that it is now, it's outlined for them to do all of them. And then there's also, in terms of engaging the students, the different levels of voice, just to kind of keep them with the group, knowing that they're going to have to shift from out loud to whisper to silent. When we're talking about these principles of UDL, I think when I was looking at neurodiversity affirming schools and also the principles of UDL outlined by CAST, I would say that both of these fall under multiple means of engagement. I think they are both aimed at getting the kids interested and getting them to participate in the learning. While I do think this is a small portion of the lesson, and that as a whole, the lesson is designed to kind of hit on those other principles of UDL, I think that we can still find ways to incorporate all three of them in here. And I wanted to take a look at, even if this is just a 5-minute section of the lesson, what ways can we find to pull in those other principles that aren't going to be taxing and aren't going to take a lot of effort on my part, but are still going to help all of my learners. Some considerations that I wanted to make regarding this lesson that I noticed is that it might be hard for some students with the fast paced changes of this activity, going from being silent and being, a louder spoken voice and being a whisper, and just kind of rotating through all of them. Having to change between writing and tracing and writing in the air. I think that can be hard and is a little bit unnecessary. For some students, it might be great and it might hold their attention more and really ingrain that. But for some students, that may take more mental load than necessary and take away from the actual goal, which is memorizing how to spell these words, since they don't follow our patterns that we've learned about. And that's the whole goal. Another one is potential noise concerns. When I do this with my class in the past, it's all as a whole and it can get very loud. And that may be something that interferes with another student's learning as well. I loved reading and hearing about how accommodations is one of the kind of pitfalls of UDL sometimes, because it doesn't necessarily replace accommodations. It can help limit the amount of accommodations needed, but it doesn't replace the need for some of them for some of our students who may have sensory needs that are not accounted for by UDL. Sarah Silverman talked about that in her Some Limitations of UDL. And so I thought that was an important one to point out. There are less opportunities for choice, which I loved the video of the autism helper. I love how she talked about how opportunities for choice are really going to increase that engagement. And then also when we're talking about means of representation, in her video of creating a neurodivergence affirming classroom, she talks about multiple ways to consume information. And I think this kind of lacks, which is an easy way to, it's so easy to incorporate a visual representation, and it does not take a lot of time if you just have a dry erase marker and a dry erase board to create that visual representation. This is both on the board, writing the word, or also having a visual representation. I think it lacks that component, especially for students who not yet are confident with spelling the word and they're just going based on what they hear. I think for all of the students, no matter what, that's kind of a barrier for them to be able to even participate confidently in the lesson. So the question is, how can we continue to make this more UDL friendly? And I think, just like I was just saying, adding more visual representations is going to help with that second principle of means of representation and helping the students internalize some of these concepts. Because as important as it is that they're engaging with it, we also want them to understand it so that they are able to express what they've learned. The next thing is giving them options on what they write on or what they want to write with. Um, if they even want to write it, if they just want to stick with tracing it or writing it in the air, I think that is fine. I don't think that is necessary for you to incorporate all of them if that's going to take away from the actual learning and the learning goal, which is for them to practice the tricky words. I also think that a student could be able to choose from doing it with a partner, doing it in a group, or recording it on Canvas. I know that in the Understood article about UDL in the classroom, they talked about giving regular feedback. And I think all of these options are great ways for students to give feedback, whether that is recording it and I get to give feedback to them. If it's doing it in a group, I can monitor and give feedback. And then the same with a partner. Partners are able to give feedback. And so I think those are great options, and it doesn't have to be one option that's going to work for everyone. That also provides flexible working stations, which was also mentioned in the article. If it's too loud to do it in a group, there are other options for them to do this and engage with that content. That's really how we can pull in this last principle of multiple means of actions and expression, um, because choice is important, but especially in the lower grades, students need a little bit more guidance until they have that confidence and that agency to be able to know the ways that are going to be the best for their action expression. And so being able to give them options and have them try different ways that they like to engage with the content is important to kind of guide their thinking. And so giving them these options of how they can do it, I think is important as well. The other things I added down here are just other extension opportunities or other ways that I was thinking about how I could extend this a little bit. I really enjoyed being able to take a deep dive into this and how it would apply to me in my first grade classroom. While that is such a small snapshot of the day, it didn't require like a bunch of extra materials. It didn't require me to rework the whole system. It just required me to think about some of the barriers that may already exist in my classroom and how I can make them more accessible to everybody. Um, and it also challenged the way that I think about accommodations, because while accommodations still fit into here, by doing this, I'm kind of eliminating the need for some of the accommodations that some of my students might need. Um, and I really liked how Katie Novak explained in the crash course of UDL learning variability and how a student's preferences and what they need is going to change day to day, because a student who might learn best by tracing on the desk may not learn the best that way every single day. And it's not up for me to decide, as long as that they are meeting the learning goal and they know that what they are doing is meeting the learning goal. Giving them that option and the ability to try new things and say, oh, maybe that wasn't for me. Maybe writing it on the paper, the pencil is too distracting. And so tracing it on my desk is a better way to do it. Giving them that opportunity to instead of me telling them what's going to work best for them is also going to go a long way in them being able to advocate for their needs and for them to develop that sense of agency in their learning. So I really appreciated that metaphor about coffee and going to a coffee shop, and not always getting an iced drink if it's -20 outside, because that's exactly what happens in our classrooms every day. And we have to be able to be flexible and create an environment that is going to cater to that variability. Because one of the biggest things a teacher needs to be is flexible. So yes, I really enjoyed UDL, and I can't wait to look at ways I can adapt more in my classroom to align more with the principles of UDL.